Alright, welcome back everybody. Got a little break in the action from the truck. I was putting the rust encapsulator on the frame of the rear end of the truck, and had I put all of it on the frame I probably would have had enough, but I put a lot on myself, and so I think that's the reason I ran out. So I'm waiting on that to come, some more of that to come, and so thought I would take a few minutes to address the cabinet of the basket case. If you'll remember, it's pretty rough. This middle section, these two strips are missing. Also, this corner of veneer is missing, as well as I've taken the veneer off the side. We will address this last. This is going to be the most intricate part of it. As you can see right here, the substrate here and here are small pieces missing. Since this is going to be a patch, if all this was off, we would consider putting a whole new substrate on the front. And it all depends on how much you want to go into this. This was a basket case, and I just looked at it as a challenge. It was a cheap radio to start with, but I felt like, you know, a little TLC, I'd make it look halfway decent. So what I plan on doing is taking and removing this part of the substrate here, and also this, and then make a patch from here to here, so that when I put my veneer on, it'll be up the same level as this. I'm going to use a popsicle stick in this place. Now it's a little bit thicker, but some 80 grit sandpaper and a Dremel tool, I can take that down and make that flat. So that's what I'm going to do for this piece of substrate. I've removed the substrate and did a little sanding right there. And I cut a little piece of my popsicle stick that will go right there. Yes, it's a little wide and it's a little thick. However, once I get it glued down good, I'll come back with my Dremel tool with a cylinder sander wheel and shape it the way I want to. So let's see if we can get this glued. Doesn't take a whole lot, but this is the substrate, and that looks like quite a bit, and it'll squish out, and I have a paper towel or so. So I'm going to go ahead and get this placed where I want it and wipe out the excess. May have to clean that out with an X-Acto knife a little later, because that'll have to be some sort of dark coloring down in there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a little wax paper on it, and this high class clamp that I want to put on it here. And the good thing about wax paper is you can see through it, and you can align it to where you want it. It is a little thick, but we're going to sand that down. But this ought to make a good substrate. And the wax paper, you know what it does. And so we're going to put that down. I found that the other clamps created too much pressure on it, and so clothespin works really well. So let's clamp this, get this in place, quit sticking to my fingers, and let that set for a while. Let's check on it and see what we have here. Got a pretty good gap there. And of course, like I say, this is actually even with the veneer, so I've got to take it down to where eighths the thickness of the veneer so that it'll lay flat on here, which I should be able to just take it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my Dremel tool, and I'm just going to plug it in, and I'm just going to grind that off even. I said the word grind it down. I should say sand it down. As you can see, I took it right down to the other substrate, and now I'll take a piece of sandpaper and take it down and make this flat and level with the other substrate. A little bit of sandpaper, and I used my handy dandy clamp as a flat sander, and so that I could get it straight. Took a piece of veneer and lined it up, and that feels pretty good. So now I'm going to have to replace this piece of veneer. I believe I'm going to go ahead and remove this small piece and just have one entire piece down this corner. I've smoothed this up. I've taken this off and I've smoothed all this up. I've got me a piece of veneer, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay it right up here, and I'm going to go and get the general shape of it with the just drawing a pencil tracing. And I don't know if you can see it or not, but I can. So I've got the general shape of it there. So let's cut it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, on the back side of this, I'm going to put some masking tape so that it doesn't split cross grain and up grain. So I want to make sure I've got it right here. So I'll just put a piece across the back, just like this. And I'll take a pair of scissors and cut that line. Alright, I've cut it. Now I want to I'll line it up, and then I want to make this cut flat. Hopefully you can see for my hand, but I want to make this cut perpendicular so that that'll fit up in there. As you can see, to get this flush and to get this angle down here, or this gap here, I'm going to have to trim this arc out just a little bit. Care must be taken. This is very fragile, and I may break it in the meantime, but if worse comes to worse, I'll go ahead and glue it down and then X-Acto knife it out, which would probably be the safest thing to do because how fragile it is. As I've always told you, sometimes you have to make changes in midstream. So what I did is I went ahead and cut so that this piece, the arc will fit like this. And we'll glue it down, and then we'll come with the straight piece, which I've dropped on the floor. Maybe I can reach it. and then we'll come up with the straight piece and butt it up there. I think that would have been the safest thing, because this was getting pretty fragile in the middle. Going to glue this on, fit this up really good. Make sure we got good glue contact there, and put that on. We'll let this sit. What I'll do is I'll put a popsicle stick right there on that and put a small weight on it to hold it, and I'm going to have to do that. I believe that will work. Like I say, make this stuff up as you go sometimes, but that's okay. You just make it up as you go. We'll put our weight on it like that, little piece of sorter. We'll let that set, and then we'll worry about the long piece. As you can see, I've changed again. When I was putting this down, the corner of this was coming up, so I went ahead and slid some glue under with the tip of an X-Acto knife, and I went ahead and clamped it with my high-priced clamp and put the weight on. So let's let that set and see how that comes out. While we're waiting for the veneer glue to dry, I'm going to go ahead and I tape this off, and I'm going to go up here and mark. I need 2 strips here. The grain runs this way, so I'm having to do it across grain. So I'm going to go, and I've marked it on this end here, and then I went ahead and marked it on this end. So I'm going to straight edge it and get me a strip to glue here and do me another. So that'll be two strips that I'm going to have to cut. You've seen how I cut it, and I'll end up gluing it the same way. As you can see, I've cut the 2 strips, and since the grain is running with it, it's breaking. So I'm going to leave the tape on it until after it's glued, and then peel the tape off and see if it'll stay in place. I've glued. Maybe I've been sniffing too much glue, I don't know. Anyway, I've glued these down. Let's get a little wax paper and put these down. I've got a piece of flat 1/8 inch substrate, and I'm going to put a weight on it to hold it down. Well, let's make sure I didn't move something there. I'm just hoping that when I pull the tape off that the glue will not come off. I'm trying to line it up so it's halfway straight. It's not going to be perfect, but it is what it is. So let's put this on there and let it set and see what we come up with. I'll let this dry, and then I took my Dremel tool with the cylinder sander on it, and I roughly ground it down. And now I'm going to go back. I believe this is 80 grit to rough it in a little bit, and then I'll go back with some 320, which I know I have here somewhere. Here we go, and finish it up, take care of all the rough edges and everything like that. Sand it down. Now this is quite a bit lighter, and this groove is still not exactly the way I want it, but you know, this was the basket case, and you know, you can, and I'm an amateur at this anyway, so I can work with this a little bit more and widen this up here with some sandpaper, or I may even take this bit of the Dremel tool, and if I'm real careful, I can bring that to where I want it to be. I took my Dremel and cleaned that gap out a little bit there, rounded it off, and then I took my sandpaper and I dressed that up, I think, very nicely. Gonna have to put some stain on this to try to match this as close as I possibly can, and I'm gonna let this part dry overnight, simply because if you ask me if I'm scared, yes, I'm scared. I'm scared that tape's going to pull that little strip of veneer and pull pieces of it out. We'll just have to wait and see. What can I say? I'm impatient. So I'm going to go ahead and try to peel this up, but I'm going to go very, very slow. And I had thoughts about this since try to get this before the glue dried to the tape. That one is okay. And let's see. I believe that one's going to be okay too. So there we go. We've got those two strips. They're not exactly perfect, but I think we can work with them and make them look halfway decent. Okay, as all this cures more, I glued down a piece of veneer that had buckled up in the dial window. Also, there was a piece missing right above the tuning knob. I'm sorry, that's the volume control. On-off volume control tuning knob is on the window. So I've got that glued down. Of course, I think the knob will cover that up. I don't think it's that big an issue, but with my wax crayons and my toners, I think I can cover it up there. I put a little bit of special walnut on there to darken it up, and then I'll go back with a gun stock with all of it, and hopefully it'll match up a little bit better. I just wanted to darken the wood a little bit. I've sanded this, and I think it's going to turn out all right. As you can notice, this apparently had been setting in water, and that's the reason it's buckled here, and you can see where the water soaked up from the bottom. I don't know. I've sanded this. I'm not sure I can do anything else with it, but we'll see. We'll see how it comes out. Like I say, it's not going to be perfect, but okay. Typically, the grain of the veneer runs from front to back on a radio. Now, I had the long enough strip to take with the grain across the thing, but I decided to go with the same pattern as it typically is. I don't know that I've ever seen any with the grain going across. So anyway, I've cut my veneer, and my plans are to center the center piece. And I appreciate friend Josh Bowman, one of my subscribers and my neighbor and my partner in crime. He loaned me a saw and some rollers for veneer. And so what I did is I matched up the edges of the veneer and sawed them off so that they fit really, really well here. So I'm going to center this, and I'm going to pull it around like this, and then have a seam here, a seam here. Now these pieces on the side are not long enough, so I will have seams on the bottom side also, which will be about this high or so. I wish that it was wider, then I could have got it in, three total pieces, but I couldn't do it. But that's where I'm going with this. I'm going to glue this, center this up, and glue this, and clamp this down. This video is running longer than I had anticipated, so we're going to take this up in the next part, and when we pick it up in the next part, we'll be finishing it up and putting the finish on it. So until next time, this is Larry from the hills of Tennessee. Thanks for watching.